HOA Karen smashed a black SUV with a hammer, then found out it belonged to Homeland Security. They say the suburbs are peaceful, but peace has a price, especially when power's in the wrong hands. I'm Jordan Alvarez, 36, a federal intelligence officer with Homeland Security. My job is classified, my demeanor quiet. After 3 deployments in a career chasing domestic terror cells, I thought a quiet suburb near Fairfax, Virginia would be good for me and my wife, Rachel. She's a social worker. We wanted calm, a place to heal. We moved into Oakwood Pines, a gated community with manicured lawns and unspoken rules. I should have known the moment we met Karen Worthington, the self-appointed head of a self-invented HOA, that trouble would come. It started subtly passive-aggressive notes about Rachel's therapy clients parking too long in front of our home. Then came the warnings about our porch flag being too large. She'd send typed letters in fake letterhead, demanding fines. But when we asked for the HOA's registration, there wasn't one. Just Karen, a clipboard, and too much time. Last Tuesday changed everything. I just returned from a briefing and parked my black Chevy Tahoe, a government-issued vehicle, outside while grabbing a delivery. When I came back out, I froze. There she was, Karen Worthington, swinging a hammer like a woman possessed. Bang! Another dent in the hood. Bang! A headlight shattered. She was yelling something about military-looking vehicles being threats to community safety. I shouted. Hey, she turned, eyes wild, cheeks flushed. This is a no-threat zone. Your car looks like a war machine. I walked calmly toward her, flipped my ID badge from my coat. Homeland Security. You just vandalized federal property. She froze. The neighborhood didn't. Phones came out. People gasped. One man muttered, "Is she serious?" I'd like to say she apologized. But Karen doubled down. That can't be real. This neighborhood has rules. Rachel came out and saw the damaged glass everywhere. Our hood buckled, the Homeland emblem partially obscured by dents. Her face paled. We filed a report that night. Police took photos. Karen tried to claim mental distress. But then we started digging. Turns out, Karen had been sending out fake HOA notices for over a year, demanding fees, enforcing bans on military gear, black vehicles, and non-citizen renters. She'd even tried to evict a retired Navy corpsman and his wife over non-regulation fencing. When the community heard about the attack on my vehicle, the outrage was volcanic. Rachel launched a formal complaint. I shared the footage with DHS. They opened a separate investigation. Neighbors began stepping forward. She fined me $400 for parking my Harley in my own driveway. She said my Korean War medals were too aggressive for display. Within a week, our federal team confirmed Karen had been forging HOA documents, impersonating a compliance officer, and embezzling tens of thousands through phony fines. Even worse, she'd been selectively targeting veterans and minorities. I called a meeting, on the lawn, open invite. Karen showed up in heels, lipstick smile in place, but this time she was met with silence and subpoenas. The twist: I didn't lead the charge. A quiet older man in the crowd stepped forward. I'm retired federal judge Ronald Nash, and I'm pressing charges. Karen's mouth fell open. By the end of the month, she'd been arrested for impersonation, fraud, vandalism of federal property, and hate crimes under civil rights statutes. The Tahoe was repaired courtesy of Karen's seized assets. Rachel started a local outreach program for targeted neighbors. We repainted the porch. The community finally realized we didn't need someone controlling us. We needed someone listening. Today, the flag still waves. And the hammer. It's in an evidence bag. The message: some people think power gives them control. But true power, it's accountability. I'll never forget the sound of the hammer on steel. It wasn't just destruction, it was a declaration. Karen Worthington wasn't just hitting a car. She was swinging at the lives, dignity, and presence of people like me and my wife. People who didn't fit her fantasy of a pure suburban utopia. The Tahoe wasn't just any car. It was registered under Homeland Security and outfitted with encrypted satellite uplinks, special signal jamming tech, and communications backups. Repairing the damage wouldn't be as simple as bodywork. It required federal contractors, security clearance, and an internal incident report. That alone triggered alarms. I had to sit through a closed-door interview with two DH's internal affairs officers the next morning. They weren't angry at me, but they were concerned about how someone like Karen had gotten so bold. "Do you believe she knew the vehicle belonged to Homeland Security?" one agent asked. I shook my head. She didn't care. She saw something she didn't like and acted on impulse. And did you know she was posing as a legitimate HOA? My jaw clenched. We had suspicions, but no proof until now. By the end of that week, Rachel and I had organized a private meeting with some of our neighbors, just the ones who had voiced concerns in hushed tones over the past few months. We met in our garage, folding chairs arranged in a circle. A Vietnam veteran named Sam opened up first. Karen said my PTSD dog was a safety hazard and tried to get animal control involved. I didn't say anything because, well, I thought maybe it was just me. Then came Mei Ling, a retired school teacher. She left an anonymous note saying my wind chimes were un-American. A young black couple spoke next. We got fined $250 for putting up a Juneteenth banner. By the time the circle made its way around, it was clear Karen had been targeting anyone who looked, sounded, or lived differently. I brought out the printed letters Rachel and I had been collecting, each with official-looking letterheads, deadlines, and violation numbers. But a background check revealed the HOA she claimed to represent, Oakwood Pines Homeowners Preservation League, didn't legally exist. It was a fraud, deep, dangerous, and well-practiced. We made a pact that night to go public. The next Monday, Rachel posted a detailed breakdown of Karen's fake HOA activities in the neighborhood's private Facebook group. We didn't use her name at first, just facts, documents, and a list of known victims. Within 6 hours, the post had over 230 comments. Then Karen replied, "This is libel. Everything I've done has been to preserve safety and community standards. You people don't belong here." Screenshots of that comment were captured in seconds. And then someone dropped the bombshell: Karen fined my dad for putting up a Blue Star banner for my brother who died in Afghanistan. The tide turned instantly. What began as cautious curiosity turned into fury. 2 days later, a reporter from the Fairfax Sun-Herald reached out to me after hearing about the hammer incident and the leaked footage from neighbors. "Would you be willing to go on the record?" I hesitated. DHS isn't a place that welcomes headlines. But Rachel was the one who said it best: "Jordan, this isn't just about us. This is about all the people she silenced." So I agreed. The article published that Friday: Fake HOA President Attacks Federal Vehicle, Faces Investigation. The story exploded. Local TV picked it up. Then national blogs. My name wasn't used in full, but the image of the Tahoe's crushed hood made the front page. That night, Karen showed up at our door. No clipboard, no smile, just rage. "I want you to take it all back," she hissed. "You don't understand what you've done." Rachel stood beside me, her phone recording. "No, Karen, you don't understand. You've hurt people, and we're done letting you hide." Karen's face flushed red. She turned and stormed off right into the path of two officers walking up the sidewalk. "We have a warrant for your arrest. Ms. Worthington," she started screaming. Neighbors peeked out from blinds again. This time, they didn't look away. They filmed. Some even cheered. The charges were real and serious: fraudulent impersonation of a legal entity, vandalism of federal property, harassment, civil rights violations under Title VI. But it wasn't just legal consequences. It was cultural, generational. People started talking. Sam came back to the garage meetings, this time with 2 other veterans from his VFW post. A group of local teens launched a TikTok account called HOA Hall of Shame, documenting fake HOAs and harassment nationwide. Karen became their first viral case. The Juneteenth couple. They were invited to speak on a podcast about suburban racism. Their GoFundMe to repaint their vandalized garage, yes, Karen had once egged it, hit $10,000 in 2 days. And me, I got a formal commendation from DHS Quiet. behind closed doors, but it meant something. Still, the fight wasn't over. Because the deeper we dug, the clearer it became. Karen wasn't acting alone. She was connected to a small group of preservationists, mostly retirees, former developers, and a local politician who had an informal plan to reclaim Oakwood Pines from what they called the urban drift. They wanted to raise property values, push out undesirable elements, and Karen, she was their enforcer. Now, we had names. Now, we had a mission. And we weren't afraid anymore. People thought it ended with Karen's arrest. They were wrong. The hammer might have been hers, but the blueprints, they came from somewhere darker, somewhere older. It began with a single property deed. While helping Mailing review her property tax dispute, another incident traced back to Karen, we found something odd, a notation at the bottom of the scanned document, a signature, W. D. Branson, Community Oversight Advisor. There was no record of a Community Oversight Advisor in any legal HOA registration database, but Branson, that name rang bells. I dug into county planning records and, sure enough, William D. Branson had been a land developer 30 years ago, retired now, but still quietly involved in community preservation boards. And guess who'd been pictured with him at a fundraiser just last spring, Karen Worthington? Rachel and I weren't alone anymore. Our garage meetings had become a hub. Maps, photos, printouts all laid out across folding tables like a war room. People started showing up early, bringing snacks, asking what they could do. Do you think they're targeting only minorities? Someone asked. No, Rachel replied. They're targeting anyone who disrupts their illusion of control. Veterans, renters, single moms, interracial couples. That's when it clicked. This wasn't about rules. It was about power and fear. I sent a quiet request to a contact at DHS with the evidence we'd collected so far, communications between Karen and Branson, several scanned violation letters signed with initials matching known preservationists, and a few interviews we recorded with neighbors who had faced threats. The reply came 48 hours later. Encrypted, coded, serious. You're not wrong. We've had eyes on Branson before. You may be sitting on a domestic extremism case masquerading as HOA politics. My blood ran cold. The term was Community Heritage Alliances, harmless sounding. But when you followed the money and influence, the picture changed. A network of old real estate magnates, corrupt local officials, and citizen enforcers like Karen, who used HOA tactics to gentrify, displace, and erase. They called it reclaiming neighborhoods. We called it war. Our next move came quietly. Sam, the Vietnam vet, invited Branson to a coffee meetup under the pretense of joining a new traditional values task force. The man took the bait. At a small cafe near downtown, Sam wore a wire provided unofficially by a friend of mine in internal investigations. I waited in my parked rental car nearby, monitoring the feed. So what's your goal with Oakwood Pines? Sam asked. Voice casual. Branson chuckled. Same as it's always been. Clean it up. Reinstall standards. The woman we had running things, she got too emotional, sloppy, but she served her purpose. I gripped the steering wheel. She's in jail, Sam said quietly. Temporary, but we've got others. I still hold the land deeds. We know who belongs and who doesn't. That was it. Evidence in hand. I passed the feed to DHS and to a contact at the DOJ's Civil Rights Division. But we weren't going to wait for indictments. We went public. Rachel wrote an op-ed for the Washington Post. I spoke anonymously on NPR. Even the HOA Hall of Shame TikTok team flew in from Texas to do a mini documentary. And then came the twist. One of the members of the supposed Heritage Board, an elderly woman named Dolores Eames, called Rachel in tears. I didn't know they were doing this. I thought it was about keeping sidewalks clean, not targeting people. They told me lies about you. I want to help. We met her in our backyard under string lights. She looked exhausted, but remorseful. They made me sign letters, told me you were criminals, foreign agents. They used fear. I should have known better. She handed Rachel a USB drive. Inside 5 years of records, emails, letters, meeting notes, a list of targeted residents. It was a blueprint for quiet erasure, and it was damning. We spent days compiling it all, presenting the materials to both the FBI and a federal civil rights task force. The next part wasn't glamorous. It was paperwork, interviews, depositions. But justice isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's a quiet knock at the door like the ones that echoed down Oakwood Pines when the federal agents arrived. Branson was arrested on charges of conspiracy, housing discrimination, and an attempted racketeering. 2 local city council members were indicted for taking bribes to manipulate zoning codes. Even the notary who helped forge the HOA letters lost her license. Karen, she stayed quiet in county lockup, awaiting federal charges. No more hammer, no more clipboard, and Oakwood Pines. It started to breathe. The veterans group hosted a barbecue. The Juneteenth flag flew again, bigger this time. Kids chalked the sidewalks. Sam brought out his old guitar. People stopped whispering. They started living. At the next community gathering, I stood in front of nearly 100 people on the same lawn where Karen once shouted orders. "We're not here today because we wanted to fight." I said, "We're here because we had to. Because someone mistook silence for surrender. And because when one of us is attacked, all of us feel it." Applause rose. Rachel took the mic next. "Let's rebuild not just our neighborhood, but our trust, our sense of who belongs." She looked out over the crowd. Because the truth is, we all do. The most powerful moment came weeks later when I received a letter not official, not from the government, from a neighbor, an elderly Korean war vet whose wife had once been fined for hanging laundry on their balcony. He wrote, for the first time in 30 years, "I don't feel like a stranger in my own home. Thank you for fighting back." I sat in my backyard reading that letter under the same stars I used to see while deployed overseas. Only now, I was home, really home. Justice doesn't always come with cheers. Sometimes, it comes with silence, cold, necessary, and final. Karen Worthington's trial began 6 weeks after the last of the federal subpoenas were served. The courtroom overflowed with journalists, legal observers, and neighbors who once feared her clipboard more than crime itself. I sat quietly on the left side, just behind the prosecution. Karen walked in an orange jumpsuit, face pale, lips tight. Her confidence was gone, replaced by something bitter and hollow. Gone was the woman who declared herself queen of Oakwood Pines. In her place stood someone who tried to wage war with a hammer and lost. The charges stacked like bricks: destruction of federal property, impersonation of legal authority, fraud, civil rights violations, conspiracy to commit housing discrimination. But the real weight wasn't in the words. It was in the faces of the witnesses. Mei Ling, trembling, told the court how Karen had threatened to report her for unauthorized lanterns that were actually cultural decorations. Sam spoke of PTSD episodes triggered by Karen's harassment. Rachel showed screenshots of Karen calling our home foreign influenced. And then I took the stand. "My name is Jordan Alvarez," I said. "I serve with the Department of Homeland Security. The car she attacked wasn't just mine. It was government issued and connected to ongoing operations. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because my wife and I came to Oakwood Pines looking for peace. And instead, we found a woman who built an empire of fear, using fake authority to punish those who didn't look like her, pray like her, or vote like her." Karen didn't look at me. She stared at the floor. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty, on all counts. Sentencing would come later. But in that moment, the court fell still, and then applause. Not from everyone, but enough to send a message the spell had broken. Karen had fallen, but her damage still echoed. Branson's trial was next. He pled guilty after his defense unraveled. The emails we provided were damning. Worse yet, the financial records showed he had received over $400,000 in consultation fees from new developers targeting areas with high minority or veteran populations. The city council members who accepted kickbacks resigned in disgrace. But the real change came from the people. With the legal cases wrapping up, Rachel spearheaded a grassroots movement, Neighbor First, a coalition aimed at educating residents about HOA fraud, racial targeting and zoning codes, and civic power. Within a month, we had volunteers from 5 counties. A podcast interview Rachel did about our story hit over 1 million streams. And Oakwood Pines, it finally formed a real, legally registered HOA with elections, transparency, and a rotating leadership board. None of it was easy. The first board meeting felt like an exorcism, residents debating fence heights, dog breed limits, and mailbox colors. But at least now, it was real and accountable. Karen received 7 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole. She attempted to apologize at her sentencing, reading from a paper, but no one clapped. No one cried. Not even her son, who we later learned had been estranged from her for years after she tried to evict his partner for being too alternative. One by one, her allies vanished into legal obscurity. Their influence, broken, but Oakwood Pines, it flourished. Veterans planted a victory garden in the commons. Children chalked murals on sidewalks that once carried hate. Cultural festivals bloomed Diwali lights beside 4th of July flags. The couple who raised the Juneteenth banner, they were asked to co-lead a diversity council. Sam started teaching guitar to the kids. And Rachel. She was offered a citywide position on a new civil harmony committee. Then, one rainy Thursday, I got a knock at the door. An older man, balding, holding a hat in both hands. My name's Dennis. I was on the old preservation board. I didn't know it would go that far. I let him talk. He told me how he'd once believed Karen's vision of standards. But after the hammer incident, he'd watched the footage over and over. That wasn't protection. That was hate. He looked up at me, tears in his eyes. Do you think I could help repair what I broke? Rachel came to the door behind me. You just did, she said softly. We never wanted to be leaders. We just wanted to live. But maybe leadership isn't about position. Maybe it's about choice. We chose to stand up, and the ripple carried further than we ever imagined. A year later, a journalism class at George Mason University did a feature on our story, The Hammer That Changed a Neighborhood. In the final paragraph, the student wrote, Karen tried to build a wall around her idea of perfection, but her hammer only helped others build bridges. I clipped that quote and pinned it in our kitchen. It reminded me of why we spoke up, of what silence costs, and what courage gives back. It's strange how the sound of birdsong can feel like victory. A year after Karen's sentencing, the air in Oakwood Pines had changed. No more whispering over fences, no more unspoken tension at the mailbox. The fear that once clung to driveways and porches had dissipated, and in its place, community. But healing doesn't just happen. It takes work. Trust isn't built in the courtroom. It's built in backyards, during block parties, at late-night porch chats when someone finally says, I'm sorry, and means it. That spring, we held our first official Oakwood Day, a celebration of inclusion, remembrance, and most importantly, rebirth. We closed off the cul-de-sac with folding tables and homemade banners. Sam grilled ribs. Mailing taught kids how to make paper lanterns. The Juneteenth couple, Asha and Darren, led a neighborhood walk with stories about Black history in Virginia. And I just watched. Watched as people who once flinched at each other's differences now clinked cups, laughed, shared garden seeds and dog treats. Watched as Rachel, holding a clipboard of real notes this time, coordinated a team of teens painting a community mural, a phoenix rising from bricks, and above it, in bold color, respect has no HOA. But it wasn't perfect. Some old wounds remained. A few homes stayed quiet, their owners refusing to join events. Some blamed us for what happened to Karen, called us troublemakers or agitators. A local blog tried to paint us as government spies who disrupted a peaceful neighborhood. But truth doesn't need everyone's approval. It just needs to be lived out, one day at a time. Then, something unexpected arrived. A package, no return address, inside Karen's hammer. Cleaned. wrapped in cloth, with a note. It was never about power. It was about fear. I see that now. You were never my enemy. I was my own. Kate, Choibu. We stood in silence for a long time, Rachel and I just staring at it. I didn't feel anger or victory, just sadness and maybe forgiveness. Rachel finally said, "We should give it to the HOA Hall of Shame. They're building an archive." I nodded. Let it be a lesson. Months passed. Oakwood Pines kept evolving. The real HOA bylaws were voted on by all residents. Every house got a printed copy and a say. New committees formed: gardening, welcome teams, holiday decor, each one led by a rotating pair of residents. No more long reigns. No more unchecked power. The local councilwoman who replaced one of the indicted officials personally visited our community. "I owe you all an apology," she said during a town hall in our park. "What happened here should never have been allowed to grow. But your courage gave us a roadmap." She offered grants to fund community improvement and civic education programs. And Rachel. She became the keynote speaker at the State Housing Equality Conference. She stood on that stage, calm and steady, and said, "You don't need a badge to defend your neighbors. You just need the will to say, 'Not here, not anymore.'" Her words made the front page. Then came a message that made me stop everything. An email from Karen's son, Mr. Alvarez. "I've followed your story from afar. My mother and I were estranged for years because of what she became. I won't defend her actions, but I do want to thank you. What you and your wife did gave me the strength to face her, to forgive her. She's in counseling now. For the first time, she's listening. I'm sorry for what you went through, but I'm grateful for what you built." Eli Worthington. I printed it out, taped it next to the Phoenix mural. Proof that even the most broken things can still bend toward light. The final piece came one evening, just after sundown. We held a candlelight ceremony at the center of Oakwood Pines, once the site of Karen's infamous clipboard speeches. But this night it was quiet. Asha spoke first. They tried to silence us with fear, but we spoke louder with unity. Sam followed. "This place isn't just where we live. It's where we choose to stand." And then Rachel stepped up. She didn't hold notes, just my hand. We weren't supposed to lead a movement. We just didn't want to be pushed out. But when we stood up, others did too. And together, we built something no one can fake. No one can buy community. A hush fell, and then, one by one, people lit their candles. Children, elders, veterans, immigrants, artists, teachers, people who, 1 year ago, barely spoke to one another. Flames danced in the warm breeze, and together, we whispered the words Rachel had made our motto: "We all belong." In the end, the hammer that struck my car didn't destroy our peace. It woke us up. It cracked the lie we were all living under, that silence was safety, that someone else would fix it. We rose from that moment not just as neighbors, but as witnesses to what happens when truth stands tall and fear is finally told. You don't live here anymore. I'm Jordan Alvarez. I came to Oakwood Pines for quiet, but I stayed for the people. And together we built something louder than hate, stronger than fear, and more permanent than any fence. We built trust. And this time, it's here to stay. The end.